So, good morning. Let's go ahead and start your lesson here. Here we go. That's not for you guys. That's the other class. There we go. So focus and directrix. Give me 1 second here. By the way, I just want to let you guys know I cannot let you in if you are into this class if you don't use your real name. So there's somebody trying to get on with letters and numbers, whatever in there. No name. I don't know who it is, so I'm not going to admit them. So if you guys have any idea who 4LR 6PM is, tell them they have to use their name. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So we're talking about the focus and the directrix. So of a parabola. Real quick, I know that a lot of you guys have seen satellite dishes. In a satellite dish, I'm going to show you two parts that you never really paid attention to. So on most of your satellite dish, it looks something like this. And then down here, you've got this little like knobby type thing. So that's really what satellite dishes kind of look like. Have you guys seen that? Like DirecTV especially? So there's two things that you guys really have never been taught, you've never learned about, that you probably never even thought about that what does that little ball there do? Is that just to protect it? What is this whole thing right here? And something else that this actually plays. Why is it like this? Well, this is a point called the focus. And part of the reason that it's like this, and some people are saying, well, isn't this just in the middle? Yes, this is in the middle, but it's here for balance. This line that's connected here to the house is a line called the directrix. Now, here's what that does. It spreads out. If you ever have a fuzzy signal, that focus is a point equidistant from every point on here, and so is the directrix. So if I picked any point and I would say, well, it's 6 inches away from right here, well, that point on the parabola is also 6 inches away from your directrix. So the focus has to be in a spot where it's equidistant to all of those points on that. And again, I'm not sure who 4LR 6PM is. I'm sure they're going to get upset here. So I don't know if it's Camera or Valeria or Araya, but I can't let them in. All right. So just to show you that, and that's what we're studying. By the way, so all that we've been doing so far are talking about parabolas that open up and down. Today, we're also going to be mentioning the parabolas that open left and right. All right, so that's just a little bit of pre-teaching and pre-talking about this. So, and we're staying at the origin, which means it's going to be 0, 0. This is the definition of them. So a parabola is the set of all points in a plane that are equidistant from a fixed line and a fixed point not on the line. Essentially, let's see if I can do this very well. So if we had something like this, now this drawing is not very good, but here's what this is saying. Your focus to any point on this parabola is going to be equidistant to any line here. So if I say the distance from here to here is 2, then the distance from here to here must also be 2. Now, that's not really important, but some people are like, why do we study this? Because every point on this parabola is going to be equidistant to both the focus and the directrix. And your vertex is going to be equidistant between the vertex, or between the focus and the directrix. That's it. All right. Any questions so far? We've just talked about some definitions. Any questions? All right. So let's keep going. Sorry, I wanted to check the chat. Now, again, this is really confusing. Like I said, I didn't want us to have 20 different slides today, so I put some of this together. Either take a picture of this, write this down, but here's what you need to know. If it's x equals, it has to open left or right. If it's y equals, it has to open up or down. And no matter what, your a value is 1 over 4p. Now, I could really load you guys up on definitions and mathy stuff. You like how that is official, mathy stuff. But instead, I'm going to explain this through doing example after example. So if it's x equals, it has to either open left or right. If your a is positive, it's going to open to the right. If your a is negative, it opens to the left. So we'd already kind of assumed that. We'd already kind of understand that. Now, y's, we've talked about this for a while, but y's, if your a value is positive, it opens up. If your a value is negative, it opens down. By the way, you're going to see this in Big Ideas written a couple different ways. I never, ever, ever solve for the squared term. Mr. Giordano and I were talking about this. This is so sloppy. In no other part of this do we ever solve for the quadratic term. But sometimes in this book and sometimes in other math classes with this, they like to solve for the quadratic variable. Never, ever, ever solve for that. I want you to solve for your linear variable. So we're used to getting x equals or y equals anyways. This is sloppy. You would never solve for something and say y squared equals. Doesn't make any sense why we do it now. And know that we find our a value by applying 1 over 4p. People might say, well, what is p? P is your distance from the vertex to the focus, not to the directrix, to the focus. But let's just say I took 2 steps here. So my value for p is 2 to go from the vertex to the focus. Then it would be -2 to go from the vertex to the directrix. So the opposite of p, which I didn't write down, the opposite of p is distance from vertex to directrix. See, it says p is the distance from the vertex to focus or directrix, but it's always to the focus. I shouldn't have said or the directrix because it's the opposite of p. That's talking about distance. There's a lot of stuff that can get confusing here. And that's why I want to focus on the problems instead of just getting mathy with this. Now, whenever you're graphing with focus and directrix, again, I need to see the vertex, I need to see the focus and directrix, then I need to see 2 more points. Now again, depending on the maturity of the class, everybody laughs at this, but the latus rectum is a line that is parallel to the directrix through the focus. And those are the other 2 parts. So it always has to go through the focus. Well, you remember how A equals 1 over 4p? The length of this is 4p. Or once you know the value of this, you cut it in half. So this has to be 2p and 2p. And we'll get to that in a couple minutes. But make sure that you guys write these 2 things down. I realize I haven't asked if anybody has questions yet, because I'm sure that most of you are sitting there somewhat confused. Trying to give you as much information as possible before we actually get to the math and the application here. Does anybody need me to slow down a little bit? Okay. So here we go. Number 1, and this is about as easy as it gets. Find the focus and directrix of the graph. The biggest hint I can give you is to solve for your linear variable. So what's my linear variable here, x or y?
Y.
Y is. So how do I get rid of this times 4?
Divide by 4.
Divide by 4. And I need you guys to see this. I do not want to see this ever. Because what is my value for A really?
1/4.
Exactly. So instead of saying divided by 4, remember division is really multiplying by the reciprocal. So you do divide by 4, but what you're really doing is multiplying by 1/4. So when you do that, that needs to be your coefficient, okay? Do not write it like this. Okay? Well, man, let's tie everything else that we've learned so far in this chapter. Let's tie this back. So what's my vertex? The first thing you have to do is find your vertex. What is my vertex here?
Is it just 0, 0?
That's it. You're not adding or subtracting anything out here. Opposite of b over 2a is 0. There's no c. So my vertex is at 0, 0. Now, the next thing that I want you to do is decide which direction does it open. Does it open up? Does it open down, left, or right? What do you think this opens? What'd you say?
Up.
Why in the world would you say up?
If it's y equals, then it's up or down, and then the a is positive, so it would open up.
Lucia, that's it. You said that perfectly. The first thing she noticed was that it is y equals. Remember back about a week ago when I said pay attention to detail because it's not always going to be y equals or x equals. Y means it has to either open up or open down, and your a value is positive. So I know that it opens up. So I can kind of slop something up here real quick. I know that it's going to look like this. Now here's something else that I did not write that you need to pay attention to. Your parabola always opens up towards the focus. So which means my focus has to be somewhere in here. My directrix has to be aligned somewhere down here. So you guys should already have a decent idea of what it looks like. Now we just have to get exact. Any questions so far? So if there's no questions, let's go ahead and finish this graph. Remember, to find your focus, A equals 1 over 4P. Well, what is my A value here? What's my A value?
1/4.
1/4.
So I just set up an equation, 1/4 equals 1 over 4P. Cross multiply. And P is 1.
Where did you get 1 over 4p?
That's what the equation for A is, always. So that's one of the things you have to know, that A is always 1 over 4P. So that was the one thing right here. Your A value is 1 over 4P.
Should we write down all those equations at the top?
Yes,
Okay.
because you'll see it both ways. You want me to leave this up here for about a minute for you real quick? So again, that's why I didn't really take questions in the beginning, because none of this is going to make any sense. And I get it. None of it's going to make any sense until we actually get onto the applications and the problems.
I can't see after x squared equals, it's like cut off.
Or, come on. Well, that didn't help, did it? All right. Anybody else need any more time? All right, so here's where we're at. Now again, I begged you guys from the beginning to pay attention to detail. So this is a y equals equation. So do you think your p-value is going to affect your x coordinate or your y coordinate? What do you think?
also affect the y?
Y.
Exactly. So if it's y equals, and you can see how if we were writing notes, we would literally fill up like 4 pages of this. It's easier to pay attention because it's y equals. Your focus has to be a point equidistant or straight up or straight across from the vertex. This is telling me how big of a step I take. So from the vertex, my focus would be a step up 1. So my x coordinate stays the same, which means my focus, all I do is I add the value of p to the appropriate coordinate. So my focus is going to be at 0, 1. And I say appropriate coordinate depends if it's y equals or x equals.
I'm confused on how you just found the focus.
Did you understand how I got p equals 1?
Yeah.
Okay, so what the value of p is your distance from the vertex to the focus. Well, we knew that our vertex is 0, 0. So our focus has to be 1 step in the direction that it's opening. So this opens up, so I take a step up 1. And then I could do one of 2 things. I could either look, where is my focus now? It's at the point 0, 1. Or when I know that it is y equals, I know that my focus, my p value, only affects the y value. Well, this is your y value, so it has to add 1. Now, watch this again. My p value is 1. My directrix has to be the opposite direction. So if I added 1 to find the focus, I would subtract 1 to find the directrix. And your directrix is a fixed line. And the equation of your directrix, again, because it's y equals, it's going to be y equals the opposite of p. And that's it.
So your directrix isn't a coordinate, it's just like
It's
y.
always going to be an equation, x equals or y equals, because it is a fixed line. Now, just for good measure, remember I told you guys, any point out here should be equidistant to the focus and directrix. Let's pick a clean one. How about this point right here? If I'm talking about that point, it is 1, 2 steps away from the focus. It is 1, 2 steps away from the directrix. Any point up here should be like that. Now, we can go with the latus rectum and show you that, oh man, I didn't draw this real well. If this is my equation, I didn't draw it real well. But here's my latus rectum. Remember, the length of the latus rectum is 4p. Well, if I know that p is 1, the length from here to my next point would be 4. Or that's the whole thing. It's 4, so cut it in half. 1, 2, 1, 2. So the length from here to here is 4. Any questions?
Wait, so what is the length? Like, what does that stand for?
What you mean, the latus rectum?
Yeah, like what is?
So the latus rectum is the length or the line that goes, that's parallel to the directrix through the focus. So when I ask you to make 2 other points, I would find the focus. So remember, the latus rectum is 4p. P is 1, so my length is 4. So that means the points have to be cut. This whole thing has to be 4. So 2 to the left, 2 to the right.
And like it doesn't extend beyond the parabola.
Nope. It's a segment. Now, let's do a few more of these. And I know that you guys still have a bunch of questions. I know that. But some of these questions are going to get answered on the next one. So I want you guys to find the focus and directrix of and graph it. So you always, always, always solve for your linear variable. In this case, which variable is going to be by itself, the x or the y?
X,
Why'd you say that, Tegan?
because the y is like squared, so you don't really want that to be like on its own.
Perfect. So I'm going to subtract 8y squared. And then I divide by 64, keep it as a fraction. By the way, you remember a couple days ago when I said, I'd much rather you guys have your answer as a fraction. This is why. And I said you wouldn't understand for a few days. Fractions tell me more than decimals do. They're easier to work with. And everything we do in math, once you get out of like geometry, fractions are so much easier to work with. Any questions on my first step? Now again, I'm not adding or subtracting anything here. My vertex is at 0, 0. Now today, everything that we do, your vertex is going to be at the origin. Which direction do you think this opens? Up, down, left, or right?
Left.
Why'd you say that?
Well, with the x, it opens left or right, and since it's negative, I assumed it would open left.
That's exactly right. So this is for sure. So automatically, here's what you guys should see. When you've got x equals negative 8y squared, again, I don't know what this looks like exactly, but I know it looks something like this, and my focus is going to be around here, and my directrix is going to be right here. So that's really sloppy. That's not very mathy at all, but that's the picture that you should have in your mind. Any questions so far? Then let's get rid of the spot. Oh, go ahead.
I have a question. Okay. So we made it go to the left because the x was positive or because it was negative 1/8?
Because your a value is negative.
Okay.
Because your a value is negative, it's going to open where the values are getting smaller, right? So that's the best way to explain this. But again, that gets confusing. So remember, if I had y equals a negative value, something x squared, right? It's going to open down because a is negative, or that's where the values are getting smaller, where my y values are getting smaller. So if it's x equals a negative, this is where my x values are getting smaller. Does that make sense? But that's probably an over-explanation. Really, if it's x equals, it's got to be left to right, and if it's negative, it opens to the left. Now, what is my a value?
Negative 1/8.
Equals 1 over 4p. So my a value equals 1 over 4p cross multiply. Now again, is it back up or are you on your phone, Gabe?
What?
Oh, like your Chromebook or your internet?
No, like my Chromebook. Mhm. Yeah.
All right, so any questions on how I found P? So look, P is -2. Here's my vertex. I already know that it opens to the left. You see how this is x equals, and my vertex is at 0, 0. You always add this value of P to the appropriate coordinate. In this case, is the appropriate coordinate the x or the y?
The x.
Exactly. So 0 plus -2 is -2, 0. That's your focus. My directrix, you subtract the value of P from the appropriate coordinate. So subtract -2 from 0, and I get x equals 2. Why is it x equals? Because it's x equals. Now, some things that I need to show you. Your vertex is always going to be equidistant or directly in the middle between your focus and your vertex. So notice, this is my vertex here. My p-value is -2, right? So left 2 to the focus, right 2 here. So sometimes, coming up real soon, spoiler alert, I'm just going to give you the focus and the directrix. You're going to have to go and find the vertex and go from there. Now, let's find the lattice rectum. Let's see how we actually graph this. So remember that my lattice rectum is 4p. My p-value is -2, which is -8. Now again, don't worry about positive or negative. So this whole thing has to be 8, but I had divided by 2, so 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's my lattice rectum. Done. Questions?
What
So-
is the? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Greta.
Sorry. Wait, so is the lattice rectum like 4 points away from the focus always?
Always. Well, it's not always going to be 4 points away from the focus. Once I have this value, don't worry about positive or negative. You just divide it by 2, and that's how many steps you take in that direction, right? So I take 4 this direction, 4 that direction. So that means the whole thing here has a value of 8.
Okay.
All right. So that part's actually pretty simple. Any other questions?
Did we do the distance from the focus equals 2p? Like we automatically did that step?
Yeah. So basically, the length of the lattice rectum, the whole thing. So this is from here to here is the lattice rectum, right? So if I know that the length is going to be 8, then I just divide it up, and it's 4 this way, 4 that way. So it has to be equidistant.
Where did you get -8 from?
Well, your p-value is -2, right? So your lattice rectum is always 4p. But you don't ever have a distance, so length can't be negative. It doesn't make sense to say, well, this piece of wood right here is -8 inches long. That doesn't make any sense. It's 8 inches long.
Hey, I thought P was 2.
That's so. Now p is -2. -1/8 times 4p, so p is -2. All right. So because of time, let's keep going because tomorrow we have to add to this, and this should hopefully clear up some of that confusion. So what if I just give you the focus and the directrix? By the way, nobody expects you guys to get this down in a day or even 2 days just by knowing this. So what we're really trying to do is get you to make sense of it. So you might want to graph it out and see what makes sense. If my focus is 0, 3, and my directrix is y equals -3. By the way, do you think this is going to be an x equals equation or y equals equation, and why?
Oh,
Y
y
equals.
equals.
Yeah, for 2 reasons. Because your directrix says y equals. That's the first one. And the only thing that's changing here, these are opposites, 3 and -3. That's the only thing that's changed. But just look at your directrix. So it's got to be y equals. If my focus is at the point 0, 3, 1, 2, 3, this is my focus. My directrix is y equals -3. There's my directrix. Where do you think your vertex is?
0, 0.
0, 0. So just split the middle. One of the first questions on your homework is going to say use the distance formula. Guys, you don't have to use the distance formula. Find the midpoint between those 2 points, between this point right here and this point right here. You really don't have to use the distance formula, which is what your book's going to say. So your vertex has to be equidistant from here to here. And that actually tells you your value of P. So I know it's going to be y equals equation, right? I know my vertex is at 0, 0, so somebody might do this. But do I need to do any of that? The answer is no. So all I have to do is find my A value. By the way, if my focus is up here and my directrix is down here, does this open up or does it open down?
Up.
Because it always opens in the direction of the focus. And what do you think my P value is going to be? Remember, P is the number of steps from the vertex to the focus. So what's my value of P going to be?
3.
It's 3. So A equals 1 over 4 times 3. So your A value is 112. Now make sure this opens up, so it has to be positive. If it opened down, it would have to be negative. But overall, that's not so bad, right? Again, this is day 1. We're going to spend 2 full days talking about it. Yeah, same thing there. By the way, the book might want you to write it like this. If the book has it like this, you would just solve for the quadratic term or multiply by 12. So it'd be x squared equals 12y. I cannot stand, in fact, most of the math teachers here cannot stand solving for the quadratic variable. Makes no sense. All right, last thing, and I know we're probably not going to have time to get this all in. Find the standard form of the equation with the given characteristics and the vertex at the origin. If you can do this, you can do any of it. We've got about 4 minutes left, so let's just do A and B. Then we'll start off with C and D tomorrow. So the first thing here is, my vertex is at 0, 0, right? So it's at the origin. I can sit here and I can graph this all day. My vertex is 0, 0. What direction does this open? Up, down, left, or right?
Right.
Right.
Right, so that's 5, 0, right? So here's my vertex, here's my focus. So what's my value for P?
5.
5. And I know it opens to the right, so P equals 5. If it opens to the right, is it an x equals equation or y equals?
X.
4 times 5 is 20. It's that simple. Oh boy, let's do B, and this is the last one we have time for. My directrix is the line y equals 3. Oh boy. My directrix is the line y equals 3. Again, there's my vertex. Y equals 3. 1, 2, 3. Here's my directrix. So does this open up, down, left, or right?
Down.
It opens down. My focus has to be down here, right? So is this going to be x equals or y equals?
Y equals.
And because it opens down, wait, the distance from the vertex to the directrix was 3. So to the focus, it has to be what?
-3.
So P is -3. So -112. Now, what I would do if I were you is I would at least look at your assignment tonight. I would not submit it because we have to get off of the origin away from 0, 0. But see what you don't understand so far so that you guys can ask questions about it on Monday and Tuesday. All right, any questions?
So when is it due?
It's not due until Tuesday night. And you've only learned about half of what we're doing, but I've actually taught you, we just haven't, you can apply what we've just learned, but we won't talk about it until Monday. All right. All right, let's go ahead and, it's Friday. I'm gonna be really nice and give you a minute and a half, let you out a minute and a half early. Look how nice I am. Oh, did anybody even notice I shaved my mustache? Anyone?
Yes.
Now I need a haircut and I'd be presentable again. I feel like my face is naked. I don't look the same. Anyhow. All right, happy weekend, guys. See ya.